Good morning. I'm just actually getting my speech out. This is it. So, when it comes to preparation, I'm all about the making it as easy as possible. So that's it. That's the entire thing. Okay. So, essentially this morning, guys, firstly, can I just say, I've been to a couple of these now, and you guys so far have been the most fun. A lot of happy, smiley faces. And so that's good. That's encouraging. All right, okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is basically understanding fear and making use of it. So actually putting it to use, actually using it for what it's for, what it was designed to do. So it's actually a gift that we were given, but a lot of people misrepresent that and misunderstand it. So firstly, we need to do just a little understanding of who I am and why I'm having this conversation. Now, I'm sure all of us are aware of those sort of victim things where, you know, you see those books and it's like, Daddy, stop, all that sort of thing. Okay? Now, I don't tend to wallow in it because I don't think it's worth it, but I do have to go into some of these details just to give you an explanation of the journey. Okay? So long story short, I come from a pretty difficult background. There was a lot of abuse going on there. I was bullied relentlessly as a child. My father committed suicide when I was a teenager, and I was diagnosed with PTSD as well in my mid-teens due to the sheer weight of violence that I've been in and around. Now, that meant that I didn't really get much of education. I left school with minimal sort of understanding of the world at large. I wasn't given any real life skills. My whole sort of existence up to that point had basically been learning how to just get through the next day. So, one of the reasons that I'm here, one of the reasons that I signed up to this, one of the reasons that I now do some of the things that I do, is because I'm addressing my own fears. So for a large portion of my life, I would see a professional person, I would see a university student, I would see somebody that was a business person, and I would instantly think, oh, well, that person's just been lucky, that person's just had advantages that I wasn't given, that person was just, given these opportunities sort of thing. And at no point would I ever stop and actually think, well, maybe that person is just a person and they got their own struggles. And I use that as a way to sort of, if you like, get through my life and make excuses for my lack of getting on with things. And so that was my fear getting in my way and stopping me from doing anything other than just living this rather sad, pathetic existence, which is where I was. And so that's basically an overview of where I came from. Like I said, it's not to wallow in it, it's not to say, you should all treat me differently because of it, because that's not it at all. It's just a basic understanding of A to B. All right, now, one of the things that I did was I started martial arts. And it was something that was in me for a long time because I'd seen these things on the television. For people of a certain age, you remember the television series Kung Fu? Yeah. I since learned that David Carradine was actually a ballet dancer, not a martial artist. But at the time, he was a hero, okay? And then obviously Bruce Lee came out, Hong Kong Phooey was on, and the wonderful television series Monkey, if anyone remembers that. He'd fly around on a cloud, right? So, but these were my escapisms. These were the kind of things that I would run and hide to because the outside world was mean and cruel and horrible, okay? And I'd have these fantasies that I was that person, that I could, be off all comers. And I had this belief that maybe one day that could be me, and I'd have no fear. And so I started martial arts training. And I had a few little bumps along the way, some were, less correct for me than others, but eventually I settled into a karate group. And I was lucky, I didn't realise at the time the quality and the standard that I'd sort of stumbled into. And they were actually some of the best. And I was very fortunate to have those as my mentors and my guides. And as you rightly said, if you want to get good at something, get a mentor. Get somebody to help you along that journey. And they did that for me. And so what basically happened was I went from a place where I was never getting told I was worth it. I was never getting told anything positive, or I could achieve something, or I could do something, or there was possibilities in the world. And I suddenly found myself in this place where I would put on a crisp white gi. And so would everyone else. Now that person could be a doctor, could be a lawyer, could be a bricklayer, could be from Africa, could be from Italy. It didn't make a difference. You put on that gi, you stepped on those mats, you started out at exactly the same level. And you were judged on your actions from that point. Not where you came from, but from that point. And it was a great leveler. And I ended up talking to all these different people from all these different walks of life. And it opened my eyes to a world of possibilities. So then I started training and I thought, hey, do you know what? I'm quite good at this. And when people started saying, well done, it was like, hey, now I do like this. You know, it's kind of addictive, isn't it? When somebody starts telling you well done for something, especially something you were previously criticised for. I'd get into a fight at school or outside, and lo and behold, the police would be involved, the authorities would be involved. I'd be having that conversation. You mustn't do that. Started winning competitions, and it was completely the other way around. It was, hey, well done, great, love it. You know, awesome job, do it again. And like I say, that was addictive. And it turns out that I was good at it. It turns out that physically I was gifted in that way. Okay? And so it was not easy for me because you've got to put the work in. But I had an aptitude for it. And so I continued. But then we hit those sort of walls again where everyone around me was kind of negative. And I don't know whether you guys are aware of this, but sometimes you can be in a room with somebody and all they ever say is no. And it's like, oh, I want to do this. Oh, no, you're not going to be able to do that. I want to do the other. No, you're not going to be able to do that. Don't be silly. What makes you think you can possibly achieve that? Okay, and that's how it started with the black belt. It was like, I want to get a black belt. No, you can't do that. Anyway, I did. Right? Then I went off and I got several more. And all the time it was like, no, you can't do that. And anyway, it transpires that I became a world champion. I've got different medals and different things. But again, that's not to show off. That's just to say that that's part of my overcoming my own sort of journey, right? And so then it was a case of, well, I want to write a book. Now, bear in mind, I've said I left school with next to nothing. No idea how to write a book. If you had ever written a book before, trust me, it's a surprisingly difficult task as a whole. So I ended up with a little pad of post-it notes. I had some yellow ones, I had some orange ones, and I had some green ones. And on those post-it notes, I wrote my book. And I still have those post-it notes to this day. They're in a little frame. And it was very, very weird because, again, I had people saying, no, you can't do it. No, you're not going to be no good at that. What on earth are you trying to do that for? But the book was finally released. And it did well. It hit #1 in Amazon on its category twice. Now, when I say it did well, it's relative because it depends on the category in Amazon, right? So, you know, you can sell 30 books and be a #1 bestseller on Amazon if you're in the right niche. Okay, so with that caveat in mind. But nonetheless, it did really well, got a lot of good attention, and it then made me want to do more. So I've now written a couple of books. I now write for a number of big magazines within my field. And that's really interesting because, again, it's one of those where every time I do that, I hit that fear wall, I hit that obstacle, I hit that problem with, can I actually achieve this? Same this morning, driving over, can I do this? Can I stand in front of you guys and have this conversation? That fear never goes away. You just learn to use it correctly. So, why have we got it? And what is it for? What's the point? So to understand it, we need to know what it is. Okay? So the question that I tend to ask people, because I do a lot of training, I teach a lot of security people, a lot of close protection people, bodyguards, all that side of thing. It's all very exciting. It's not really. Most of that involves standing on a door for 12 hours, yeah? But we've all seen the film, haven't we? The Bodyguard with Kevin Costner? It's just like that, honestly. Right? Okay, now, so what is fear? So if I said to you guys, where are we on the food chain?
We're not at the top.
Top. Okay, well we heard a top there and then we heard another top. Yeah, well quite often people will say...
Face to face with the lion.
Yeah, that's what he's going to say.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with this, yeah. So basically a lot of people will say that we're at the top. Now the reason they have that perception is because we've learned how to make fire and shelter and weapons and so on and so forth. The truth is we're actually in the middle. That's why we have fight or flight. So if you took a true apex predator, something like a great white shark, right? It swims along, minding its own business, and it bumps into something. It has two thoughts. Can I eat it, or can I mate with it? That's kind of it. That's the PG version, by the way, right? Yeah. But that's all that swims through its mind. Okay? That's all it's thinking about. It doesn't think about running away because, apart from what we've done to it, you know, historically it has no things that prey on it.
Is that the same for a female shark?
Starting stuff now, mate.
In our world of equality, yes. Okay, so if we look at a true apex predator, all it has is that fight response, not the flight. Okay? Now, if we look at a prey animal, such as a horse or a bird or something like that, then their only response is to try and escape, to try and run away. Now, because we're in the middle, we have both. So there was a time when we would hunt some things and some things would hunt us. Now, obviously, we just go to the supermarket, we buy it ready packed, and we've no idea where it came from. But there was a time when that wasn't the case. So that's ingrained in us, and it really doesn't matter how far ahead we get with our society and our claims to be this structured, organised world where everybody's nice and everybody's lovely. The truth is, it is just a veneer. We're all animals in people suits, and we will all revert quite quickly back to that animalistic behaviour if the choice happened. So it's one of those where we need to remember that as much as we want to try and be nice and all the rest of it, we are animals in people suits. That's just a fact. And we all have a subconscious element towards us where our primeval brain, we've all got it, that little dude at the back here, that actually makes us make decisions. And that's really interesting. And what's interesting about that is we are pre-programmed to make those decisions. Each and every one of us, we have our own programming that tells us the decision to make. Okay, and that's based on a number of different things. It's based on the kind of things that have happened to you in your past. It's based on your education. It's based on previous decisions that you have made. So essentially what we're getting is fed masses of information all the time. And we can't take all of that in. So what we do is we cherry pick pieces. And then to fit those pieces together, we use the information that we already have in our mind. Now, if that bias is towards a terrible outcome, that's what we're going to see, a terrible outcome. Whereas if that bias is an opportunity, then that's also what we'll see, is that opportunity. And so having to rewire the brain is one of the fundamental things with regards to understanding fear. So it's not making it go away. When somebody says, oh, I'm not afraid of anything, they're either a liar or a psychopath. Probably best not to employ you one of those. Okay. Yes, my friend? 5 minutes, thank you. Okay, so that's gone quick already, isn't it? I better get to the point. Okay, so, right, why do we need it to grow? Okay, so I've got my little notes here. Now, if we're looking at it from a business point of view, right? If we're looking at it that way, how are we going to expand? How are we going to grow? How are we going to get better at what we do without accepting a certain amount of risk? We need that. We need to take that, we need to accept it. And it doesn't mean you've got to literally just jump both feet into some crazy situations, but it does mean that you have to sometimes establish the fact that there is a little bit of fear and do it anyway. And even more important, if you have employees, if you have people that work for you, if you have an environment where those people can take those risks safely, they're going to be more inclined to do so. So giving people the opportunity to expand out, push the envelope a little, try and be a little bit more, but you do that in a controlled environment where you can catch them if they fall, that's got to be healthy, that's got to be helpful, that's got to be beneficial. So if we look at it again, go back to a little martial arts scenario, if we look at sparring, so if I'm taking somebody that's never sparred before, I don't just throw them in with a big tattooed lump with a nose like that. I hold their hand. I give them all the safety equipment. I give them some very, very basic parameters to work to. And then once they've mastered that and they're happy there, then I'll give them the next level and so on and so forth. At no point do I just throw them to the wolves. Okay? And again, that translates over to us in general. Okay? What we've got to realise is we're like elastic bands. And that's where it gets interesting when it comes to fear, because we can't live without it. We need to embrace it, because we're like elastic bands. So if I say, if you have an elastic band and you pull it, what happens? It expands, yeah? What happens if you pull it too much? Snaps, absolutely. But what happens if you don't pull it at all? It stays exactly the same as it's always been. Okay? So that's why we need it. What we need is that stress, that tension, that fear. We need it, but we need it in a way so that it helps us to expand and expand, not to the point where it makes us snap. So we've got to know where that is. So guys, that's basically the end of my talk today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, then feel free to ask.
Thank you. I used to watch that Kung Fu. You know, you say he was a dancer. Not
David
a fighter?
Carradine, yeah, he's a ballet dancer, yeah.
Is that why there was never any fighting in it? Like, you look forward to a Saturday with Kung Fu, and
Yes.
it's like nothing happened, did it really?
Well, there were always two really cheesy fight scenes in every episode. It's the same with the Hulk. He always turned into the Hulk twice per episode.
Do you know how he died? David Carradine.
Go on then.
Oh no, I can't say it out loud. You have to Google it.
Oh, no, go on, mate. Come on. We're here now.
In a compromised position in a wardrobe.
Oh, this is true story.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
No, do you think it's better to have fear than not to have fear?
Well, we all have it. It's whether or not we admit to it. We all have it. I mean, if you take anyone's life journey, and you can't tell me that the first time you get a brand new iPhone, you're not scared of that thing. Like, excited, definitely, but a bit scared.
Turn everything off.
The same when you sit an exam, when you do a driving test, when you do something new, you have to speak in front of important people. If you've got a really pivotal meeting, whatever it is, that fear is always going to be there. You know, even if it's just a simple case of catching the last train back from a busy city centre and there's 3 or 4, you know, pretty drunk, rough-looking dudes over there. You know, they may not be a problem, but you feel it. And so it's learning to accept it. Yeah, it's learning to understand it and utilise it.
Right. I understand we've all got a bit of caveman in us somewhere.
Totally. Some more than others.
Do you think some people deal with fear better than others?
Yes.
And if so, why?
Well, basically, there are two sides to the brain, simplistically, emotional and rational, right? So if I walk into Tesco's and I see one of those, buy 3, get 5 for the same price. I don't actually need 5 giant blocks of cheese, but my emotional brain is going, wait, that's a good deal. Okay? There's nothing rational about that. It's why you get puppy dogs and very attractive women on adverts on the television, because they're trying to get your emotional side. Yeah? The rational side is where you want to be switching into. So that's the thing you want to try and get. So whenever there's fear, you want to try and move over to that rational side and see it for what it is. So one of the tricks that Navy SEALs and Special Forces teams, things like that do, is they've got breathing exercises, very specific ones, where it controls the breathing, which then sort of lowers all the stuff that's going whizzing around the body, all the adrenaline and stuff. And so it helps them bring back that rational side.
Also, Barry, don't go to Tesco.
Don't go to Tesco.
Yes, quite, yes.
No, I don't need Tesco's, that's for sure.
Any other questions, Alex?
Yeah, quick one. Do you think men deal with fear better than women, or is it just, you know...
Oh,
we
you
being-
can't say that.
we being-
You can't say that.
Got some stony ground.
Deary.
My honest answer,
You shot, Barry. You shot.
my honest answer is, I think both have strengths that they play to, very much so. And honestly, everyone's
Good answer.
individual, isn't it? Yeah.
Good answer.
But it's true. I mean, as I said, I run a martial arts gym. I've trained an awful lot of security people, military people, NHS staff that deal with very difficult situations. And you know, I have both seen and heard stories of women doing incredible feats of bravery in the same way that I have with men. So it's horses for courses.
Matt, do you still compete?
Not anymore, no. As you can probably tell, I'm a little bit hefty around the midriff these
I
days.
still teach.
I still teach, yeah. No, the last time I competed was about 4 years ago. And very quickly, that's another thing on what we're talking about here. Long story short, a friend said to me, do you want to come to the Nationals? I said, yeah, right, well, if I'm going, I might as well compete just for the heck of it. So I competed. To my absolute horror and delight, I got through to the finals, which meant I seeded for the national team, which meant I could go to the World Championships. And that was the first time in about 20 years I competed. And I went, do you know what? The opportunity's arisen. It may never come again. Let's do it. I had 3 months. I lost 2.5 stone, got myself into a semblance of shape. And then, would you believe it, went to Portugal and won a gold medal. Which is pretty incredible. But that, I think, is where I'm going to leave it. I think that's my, that's yeah. We don't want another story added on where I travel halfway across the world to get beaten up and feel sorry for myself. So we're going to leave it
Gold
at
medal,
that.
Matt.
Thank you, guys.
That was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. Does Barry give the seal of approval?
Definitely not a sales pitch. I like it.
You like it? Barry gives it. How many out of 10?
11.
11.
11! Right.